Presentation. Perfect. There we go. All right, I'll try and keep it to 10 minutes. I think I'm a bit more than that, but I'll try and move through this really quick. So basically, just to give you like a high-level overview of bird-friendly glazing in terms of what the options are that are out there, why we need it, and I'll try to move through it pretty quick. You guys can hear me okay, right?
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. So some of the inherent benefits of birds, obviously the fact that they exist on these planets, we shouldn't kill them, is about 5% of the plants humans use for food or medicine are pollinated by birds. So it's not just the bees, it is the birds and the bees. So let me stay on topic. It's not a sex education class here. Birds control the pest population. Much like Bob Barker wants you to control the pet population, we need to control the pest population by allowing our birds to exist. They eat about 400 to 500 million tons of insects a year just in the United States alone. So extrapolate that over the entire planet, and you got a lot of insects. Of course, the nice thing about that is that they also help to keep insects from evolving into the size of a fist. We're not chasing massive mosquitoes around, which would be horrible for our mental health. So, of course, birds are good for our mental health because if you are a member of an Audubon Society, you like watching birds, it's very relaxing. I personally love hummingbirds. And up to 1 billion birds impact the built environment in the U.S. every single year, meaning that, that's just, again, U.S. alone. So our built environment is impacting the bird population. So now we see a lot different than birds do. Our binocular vision is really great for driving cars, for seeing things kind of coming out of our peripheral vision, whereas birds have a very narrow binocular vision, even though their peripheral vision is almost 360 degrees. But imagine a bird trying to drive a car and having to shift its head constantly back and forth to see what's in front of it and relying upon its peripheral vision to see all the different threats that are around us. This is one of the reasons why they impact the built environment, because it can be very confusing when things in their peripheral vision are not seen with the clarity of their binocular vision. So some birds can see into the UV spectrum, which means that their environment is highly dynamic compared to human vision. Now, there are 4 different reasons why birds collide with the built environment. You've got the reflectivity of glass, so reflection. You've got glass transmission, meaning the clearness of the glass. You have the way we design our buildings and how the landscape can blur the demarcation lines between the two. And then you have lighting, inside and outside. So take a look at this building, and if you're running really, really fast and you're trying to escape from, say, I don't know, like a mountain lion, what are you going to jump into? The tree on the left that actually exists, or the tree that is reflected in the building? As humans, we're going for the tree. As birds, we can't necessarily determine what the difference is between the two, and we might just hit the actual building itself. I was actually sitting in my office 3 months into being into the glazing industry and witnessed a bird collide into gray reflective glass right in front of me, and he did not survive. And that was at ground level too. Transmission of glass. Again, same mountain lion is chasing me. If you take a look down below, you might see the doorway down there. If you think I'm running towards the door, you bet I am. Bird, on the other hand, is going to see the clarity of that glass, try and fly straight across into the trees on the other side, quite possibly, and smack right into the glass. You've got the design of buildings. So if I'm standing still in the middle of, say, a fun house, and I've got all this reflective glass around me, I have the ability to decide which way I'm going to go. I may be right, I may be wrong, but a bird flying incredibly fast at breakneck speed, no pun intended, is going to have a very difficult time determining which way to go. So if you have a building and you're walking towards the lobby and you have a building on your left and a building on your right and this massive lobby in the middle, birds can fly into that and become incredibly confused to the point where they just get tired and fly into the glass, and then we have impact. And then you have the lighting in a building. So the Freedom Tower in New York City is 104 stories tall. It has a light that shines up at the top, up into the heavens. Birds get distracted by that. Birds love flying to cities because they see the light and they get attracted to it. So imagine this light shining up into the sky, and the birds are attracted to it, and they fly up and they fly around and around and around. So finally they get exhausted, and then they impact the concrete environment. So what do? They cycle the light on top of that building every 20 minutes. Now, this building's only 2 stories that we're looking at, but imagine you've left your ham sandwich sitting on the counter, and the bird happens to see it and thinks that that's food. Bam, they fly through the glass or fly into the glass because they think it's really clear and they can get to it. There's also a lot of our built environments are being built with vertical landscaping inside to improve the sort of the urban health inside our working environments. That can be an attractive area for birds to come and fly into. So the American Bird Conservancy created something called the tunnel test. Now there are other different tests out there, but this is the one we focus on and the one we have our glass tested to. So much like the Fenestration Canada Spring Conference, where we attracted a whole bunch of people to come together and we lured them in with craft beer and wine, we lure a bunch of birds in and we send them down the tunnel one at a time. They fly towards what is called a pivot point. They have a decision to make. Do they fly to the left towards the control glass, which is clear, or fly to the right towards the test control glass, which has some sort of a pattern on it? Now, there is a net in the way, so obviously they're not flying into the glass. That'd be counterproductive. So the birds that fly into or towards the control glass, I should say, that's part of the avoidance index. Now, granted, they're not trying to avoid it at that point, so I don't know why they call it avoidance index. But on the other side, the ones that fly towards the test glass with the pattern, that is the threat factor, and that is 30 or below that we need to achieve. So once they have birds fly towards that glass using different patterns, they determine that a pattern that is 2x4, known as the 2x4 rule, is the minimum methodology that we want to use. Now, in the state of New York and over in Toronto, they use the 2x2 rule, which is, again, 2 inches across, 2 inches high. So the birds don't want to fly into a space that small. So various float glass manufacturers have come up with different methodologies for applying the 2x4 rule or 2x2 rule onto different glass substrates. You have UV coatings, you have etched products, and you have printed glass products. And I'll touch briefly on each one of them. So UV coating is basically a UV coating that's on surface one of a float glass, and that is laminated to another piece of glass, which can either be clear, but in this particular case, we're focusing on having low E on your surface 2 of monolithic, surface 4 of laminated glass. The pattern that we use happens to be almost like a wallpaper-like looking application of UV coating. And essentially birds are going to see that see within the UV spectrum, and they're going to hopefully avoid that type of glass. Now, from the outside as humans, very difficult to actually see that UV coating. I've sat there with a piece of 4x6 sample glass and had an incredible time trying to find where that pattern is on the glass, despite the fact that those lines are about 1 inch wide. From the inside, it looks clear. So this is great if you're trying to preserve your indoor view of the exterior environment, or if you're on the outside and you don't want distracting patterns or dots on the glass. The only downfall, of course, is that we're talking about laminated glass, so you're probably looking at about a minimum 10 millimeters when you combine a 6/4, or more like a 6/6, so your glazing cavity has to be able to accommodate that. But of course, the benefits of laminated glass is safety glass, you have 99.9% UV filtration, and you have sound abatement. Now, etched glass, of course, is an etched coating put on surface number 1. That glass is then provided to Guardian. We put a low E coating on surface number 2. So you get to keep your low E exactly where you need it to be, which is onto, unless you're designing your energy performance to have a bit of a passive heat gain. So now if I take my my low E and I move it from, let's say, the double coated low E product, and I move it to surface number 3, but my intent is to have a center of glass solar heat gain of 39, then I'm going to gain about 4 or 5 points on my solar heat gain. So it's not a huge difference, but it is still an impact. And then, of course, if I switch over to triple silver low E, which the intent of that product is to actually reduce your solar heat gain, I'm going to actually see an increase of my solar heat gain by about 10 points by moving it to surface number 3. So not only am I using a slightly more green glass, I'm also spending more money on a triple coated silver, and I'm raising my solar heat gain. Now, you might be able to do energy performance modeling for commercial buildings where you can benefit from that, but in residential, especially in this market, probably not the way that you want to go. Now, just looking at the 2 products on the left, this is a vertical and a horizontal pattern that are actually provided by Walker. The other 2 are provided by a different manufacturer, and they come in 2x5 pattern, 2x4 dot pattern, 2x2, with 2x2 and 2x5 are a little bit better in terms of the amount of waste that you get from optimization with the glass, from having to shift the dots to line up if you're trying to have your pattern match from light to light. And now we've actually just announced a few weeks ago, we've come up with a randomized pattern, and we also have jumbo sizes in various products, and we've been approved to put bird-friendly dots on reflective glass. Then you've got fritted glass, which is the highest visible pattern for bird friendly when it comes to humans and from birds actually seeing the patterns. Now, again, talking about solar heat gain, if you're putting this on surface number one, and I absolutely stress that the pattern should be surface number one for any type of bird friendly glass, because as you push the pattern further into the IGU, you lose the efficacy of the pattern. The bird still has reflectivity to deal with, and you lose the low fret factor that you're going for. So I can move my fret to surface number three and keep my low E on two. Again, I lose the efficacy of the dots. But then if I flip around and I put my dots on, or sorry, I put my dots on one and my low E on three, again, I'm impacting my solar heat gain performance. The benefit of frit though, you can work with different patterns. You don't have to have ABC tested and approved patterns. You can do mock-ups, and if it achieves exactly what you're going for saving birds, impacting the building, all the more power to you. There's definitely some buildings out there that have used different patterns that have been highly effective. I think they're out in Tawasin, over on the indigenous land, and some of the buildings out there, very attractive, and they actually meet the fret factor of 30 or below. Now, of course, if you're going down this path as a glazer, as a fabricator, be it residential or commercial, you can go to some of the tools and resources we have at our website and our resource hub. You can do your glass analytics, where you can basically pair up your glass with your different bird-friendly options, determine how it will work with your framing. You can order samples, and then, of course, if you're absolutely stuck or just need a little bit more information, you can give me a call, email me. Just don't send your information by carrier pigeon, because my house office does not have bird-friendly glass. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. That was awesome. And like 8 seconds to spare. Fantastic. Hey, you know what? We'll hold the questions for now, and we'll just roll right into Mark. Mark, am I butchering your name? Mark Deschamps. Mark Deschamps? You're on mute.
No, you're doing good there, Rick.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm sure everybody here knows Mark. Mark's been with Walker forever, and is also an expert in bird-friendly glass. And yeah, we asked him to join us today and give us Walker's perspective on this product and market.
Well, thanks, Rick. Thank you, everyone, and Jeff, a great presentation. Let me share my screen. All right. Let me see. I guess you're seeing the those windows on the right-hand side, are you?
It's lagging a little bit. It just says that you're started screen sharing.
Yeah, it's still loading at my end.
There you go.
All right. So are you seeing the windows on the right-hand side? I guess you are, eh?
No, just see, and at least I can only see main screen bird-friendly glazing market overview with their logo and the date.
Okay, good. And is the audio fine? I've been known to be having a bad audio on Zoom calls for some reason.
No, it sounds fine.
Okay, good. All right, so I guess a question for you guys is, when you got into the glazing or window business, did you ever guess you'd need to know as much about birds as you do now, right? I don't think so. So it's kind of a very intriguing trend, but it is a real issue, and that's why there's legislation, and there's discussions, and there's demand out there for bird-friendly glazing now, and it's only going to go on the upward curve for sure. So I'm gonna try not to overlap with Jeff's stuff. I don't think I will, but maybe touching a bit on a few things. I think the major confusion that we've seen over the years, and certainly recently, is prescriptive versus performance standard. So to give you some clear examples, while you have the New York City code, which, as Jeff pointed out earlier, calls for an ABC-based threat factor. So they're really looking for a performance number. You gotta meet at 25 or 30, whatever. New York City is 25, but you've got other cities that could potentially ask for all the way to 30, because ABC considers 30 or less to be bird friendly. But there aren't any standards out there, either in Canada or the US, calling for a performance number. That's really important to understand. So basically, you see that in codes in certain cities. And it's all based on either the tunnel test or a field experiment from Daniel Clem. The tunnel test that Jeff touched on it, we at Walker happen to dislike the test quite a bit because it has major flaws. We don't believe it's reporting reliable results, and most importantly, it does measure only transparency, not reflection, which is a big no-no as far as we're concerned. There's definitely, all the science points and risks associated with reflection to be quite important, and in fact, in as much as the test on transparency could be said to address nighttime conditions, you really have to have also a test to address daytime conditions, essentially addressing reflection. So we don't, we're not in love with it, but obviously you got to put up with it because it's out there and it is referenced in some codes. Professor Clem, who's a renowned ornithologist, had come up with a field experiment way back. Basically set up bird feeders out in the open field, and he's got windows, frame windows 10 feet away, 15 feet away, and measuring how birds react to those. That's kind of another test. Perhaps closer to real life conditions or real building environment conditions, but not quite there yet. So those are not bad tests, but they unfortunately cannot be rely 100% on to determine if a solution is effective or not. So the other approach that we have is a prescriptive approach, right? So as opposed to having a number to meet, which is based on the test. And by the way, the tests, it's kind of tough, to get products tested, because you really can test only fall and spring, where you collect birds. Outside of those two periods in the year, pretty tough to test. And you're also limited by bird capacity, like you have to collect birds, right? So you gotta have a number of birds available to get those tests done. So there's a capacity issue as well. But on the prescriptive side, it makes everyone's life easier in that everyone across the supply chain can determine if a proposed solution can work if it meets a number of different criteria. So Jeff alluded to the 2x4 rule. There's rules out there, and it's all based on all the scientific studies and research that's been done over the years. Ornithologists from different parts of the world, including the U.S. and Canada, have done a lot of research, and by basically putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, you kind of figure there's a set of rules that if you meet, you're likely to be having a solid bird-friendly condition. So CSA came up with a standard, and I have here, I'm saying performance standard, but that's a type, which I should have written prescriptive standard. I did this too quick. In 2019, basically they took that prescriptive approach. Okay, they said, okay, you gotta cover the 90% of all glazing materials. You gotta address the high risk areas. You're gonna have to have bird friendly 16 meters from grade, 4 meters from, again, risk areas. markers have to be on the first surface. Your minimum size, pattern size, or marker size got to be 4 mil with a maximum spacing 50 mil, which is 2 by 2. NGA, in fact, in 21 now, I should have put that in 21 published a bird-friendly design guide, again, based on the same approach, a prescriptive approach, basically laying out those 4 or 5 important criteria to meet to consider a solution bird-friendly. So it makes, I think the prescriptive approach in by and large, eliminates a lot of the confusion, right? If you're meeting those criteria, you're actually going to do well. Now, I'm not saying this because I read a book and that's what the book says. I can tell you one thing. Walker has done like countless bird-friendly projects, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And I can tell you that of the ones that we did that we were able to get post-installation results, we're actually surpassing all of the numbers we've gotten from test results, or even looking at all the prescriptive criteria. Where that if you're meeting those criteria, you're going to have a solid bird-friendly solution. Is essentially the message I have for you guys, and we're going to go into a bit more details on that in a few seconds. So prescriptive versus performance, that's the discussion. There's confusion there, but we at Walker will really advocate the prescriptive approach quite a bit. Legislation across Canada, well, that's what is driving the demand, as you probably know, and it's going to keep growing. There is mandatory guidelines or provisions in some cities, Toronto obviously being the early adopter and the leader. You do have voluntary guidelines as well. Ottawa has got one. We anticipate they will turn it to a mandatory one. I believe it's pending final vote or whatnot, and maybe it's already been voted. This is as of March of last year. We're due at Walker to do another update. So I'm just giving you the snapshot we came up with roughly a year ago. Jeff alluded to that or covered that in terms of solar performance. We do believe that when you design a bird-friendly solution, you really have to take an integrated approach. You can't just work in a silo and say, "Oh, I need bird-friendly, but I'm not going to have to consider all other criteria or intents out there." You do have to have you have to make trade-offs here. You can't just look at the bird-friendly solution without considering other elements: solar performance, design, occupants' well-being, like how much the occupant will see inside to outside, building code, sustainability, and of course cost. So, and there's a slew of additional considerations as you speak to an architect. It is always a number of different things to consider. So it's important to have an integrated approach. Really, really important. And you gain credibility by not just focusing on the bird-friendly, but focusing on the entire solution that will make the glazing 100% suitable for the intent of the architect, of the building developer. At the end of the day, our position is to say the proof is in the pudding. You can talk about threat factors based on some shady test method. You can talk about prescriptive criteria. You can talk about this, talk about that. But at the end of the day, an actual install will be the ultimate proof that this is working. That's what at Walker we're pushing a lot now. We feel this market has gained a certain level of maturity, and we need now to come up with documented case studies that show that solution ABC does work. Now, I know there's like multiple glazing solutions out there. Mixes and matches are crazy. Like, look at the number of OEs we have, look at the number of bird-friendly solutions we have. I get that. But there's definitely a lot of value in picking up on the installs that were made, hopefully monitoring the results and see if you get hits and kills or not. And that's, in our opinion, that's really like the ultimate goal. So what's our approach? Well, you kind of guess what it is, right? With what I just covered. Education is really key. We need to keep educating people in general, the glass trade, architects, designers, specifiers, consultants, everyone that can be involved in bird-friendly glazing. They need to be educated. In fact, we came up last year with a pretty cool guide on the, and we have a Canadian edition. We already have done four revisions. Kudos to our marketing team. Basically we cover everything. Everything you need to know about bird friendly in Canada. With we talk about energy codes too. Like I said, integrated approach really important. So if any of you or people that would like to have something, a tool maybe to learn more than maybe this, 20-minute combined presentation today, just ping me and I'll be happy to share a copy of that e-guide. We have different solutions. Markers, etch markers on number 1, without Lowy on number 2. We do have a UV option. Again, we're trying to offer different solutions, much to Guardian's approach. It is really like we don't have just a one fit all solution, because there's different needs out there for different purposes or intents. Now, post-installation results, I mentioned, we feel it's so important. We do have 7 documented projects with its kills under 5%. So Jeff explained earlier that when you get a threat factor or threat rating from ABC of 25, it means that in a controlled environment, no pun intended here, we're at 25% of the birds that are thrown in the tunnel will hit the glass and 75 will avoid it. Well, the 7 projects that we've documented, we have a less than 5% number. So proof is in the pudding. We have an 8-page PDF on that. Again, if you're interested, happy to share it with you. We talk about the project, provide details, and we do give numbers. We have even the makeup and so on and so forth. Pretty powerful stuff, I could tell you. When you show this to an architect or a building developer, it's kind of an eye-opener. Whoops, I'm sorry. And we're going to be adding 3 or 4 this year, so hopefully we're going to be able to show 11 or 12 of those case studies. So again, happy to help out anyone with information, and thanks again for the time today. It's always good to talk about bird friendly. We never have enough time. We could talk about it for hours.
Exactly. And I mean, great point about the post-installation results as well. I think that that point can't be driven home enough. So open it up to questions. Any questions? I know that's quite a bit of information to go through. Don't be shy.
Is there any solution for already installed windows or glass?
Yeah, it's great question, Richard. Retrofits, really, it won't be a factory, of course, solution, factory-based solution. So you're kind of down to, film is probably the one thing you want to consider. mean, Jeff could probably chime in on this, but in terms of factory-based solutions, it's kind of tough. The films are a good option. They come with challenges, and particularly if you want to put them on surface number one, that could mean a pretty limited useful life, but it's an option.
Yeah,
I got you.
Four-letter word, and we'll probably void your warranty on your IGs.
Well, depending on the product, there's a product out there where you apply with a film, but you peel the film off and the dots remain. The only problem, of course, is that you either do it at the fabrication level, which means you have to have enough space and time for a third party to come in and apply it, or you apply it after the fact, which means that you have to have access to the building to put the patterns on. And so far, from a commercial standpoint, I haven't really seen haven't seen it gain any traction. Part of the problem is that when you actually go to find the information, the only installation videos that are readily available are for the residential side of things, which scares commercial guys away because they think they have to put a line of dots down and then peel off strip at a time and measure it, perfectly 2x4. Challenging for sure. From a residential standpoint, really cool idea. From a commercial standpoint, has its challenges, but it's certainly an option if somebody is looking to do a retrofit without removing all the units. There's a building in Florida that could probably use this, where they get about 8 birds dying every single day, impacting the building, and they've tried, putting up wind chimes and things like that to stop people from hitting the glass, and none of these options have worked.
Yeah,
So,
you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So this could be for either Mark or Geoff. When it comes to restoration or refitting of glass in the mandatory marketplaces, do they have to then follow the bird-friendly ruling, or can they go back to what originally was placed in the building?
Sorry, I had a notification that muted you for a second.
Oh, I was just saying, if the building is restorated and they put new glazing in, do they have to follow the mandatory requirements for the bird-friendly glass, or can they just replace it with the glass that was there before?
That's a good question.
Because there's lots of restoration going on, right? I mean, there's lots of condos going up, but the marketplace for buildings for office lease is going down, but to restore things still has to continue. So when you restore the glass in the buildings over time, I'm curious whether the mandatory requirements would then kick in.
I would think that it's thermal performance first, and then build up from there where possible. There are some things that just don't work when you adapt it. And even despite all the best intentions, I had somebody only a few years ago asked to have GPW put on the outboard light of all the patio doors and units facing the building next to it, which maybe 10, 15 years ago would have been even acceptable, but today it's not. So then, I honestly don't know what the end result was in that regard. But if you can do it, and again, it being that it's Vancouver, if it's Vancouver is going to say like or better. But if it's only an advisable recommendation to do it and not code driven, then I think they would go with the cheaper option, quite honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's specific to the local building code, the applicable building code. Very specific. We've ran across projects where they didn't have to conform to the code. They just had to replace whatever was there with the equivalent. And we've seen other cases where the code was, crystal clear. You gotta meet the code. It's an old building with, maybe you'd think they have grandfathered rights or something, but that's not the case.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.